Hey, Comm Academy. Thanks for this opportunity to talk to you today. Oregon Internet Response. This is an organization that didn't exist more than 7 months ago, and it's a unique little story. I'm Randy Neals. I'm a volunteer with Seattle Auxiliary Communication Service. I'm an internet engineering professional in real life, and I was one of the volunteers with Oregon Internet Response. The news media have covered Oregon Internet Response extensively. There was a recent news story that really tells the story of OIR quickly and efficiently. So I'm going to cut to the news story and give you the quick overview because they did a much better job than I can, and then I'll come back and show you some pictures from a slide deck we have.
You are in for a ride. Long story short, a group of individuals came together to get internet back up and running for these communities in the McKenzie River Valley. This is after the holiday farm fire burned there in early September, eating up homes and taking out phone and internet services, isolating communities.
I'm Lane Tompkins. I'm the superintendent principal of McKenzie School District. About a third of our staff lost their homes and about a quarter of our students ended up losing their homes.
Add distance learning with no internet, and it's an even more difficult situation. That's why he says he's grateful to volunteers with Oregon Internet Response for its help in restoring connectivity. But let's rewind a little. Now let's get to how the internet was restored. Jeff Turner, who heads up the group, says they heard about the need in the McKenzie River Valley.
It's a bunch of people that were just got together as internet nerds and search and rescue people.
First question:
where do you get the internet from?
Bend Broadband stepped in to help, donating bandwidth.
Our next challenge was how do we get it to the McKenzie Valley, right?
Well, Bend Broadband shot a wireless link to the top of Hoodoo Ski area. Then from there, another wireless link to a tower at Carmen Smith Reservoir. Then to BELKNAP BLUFF, and finally to Castle Rock, an old fire lookout. The team got a little help from these young men attending a basketball academy in Blue River.
They all hiked up batteries and solar panels and wood boards and tools, and they helped us hike all this stuff up there to finish building this out.
Then these metal boxes were placed throughout the community, functioning as hotspots.
They put a little QR code on the side of it so people could walk up to it and just scan it with their phone, and they connect to the wireless network.
You drive around the community, you'd see a lot of cars huddled around these big orange metal boxes.
Even now, Lane Tompkins says the school district is still using the Oregon Internet Response Team's high-capacity connection 5 months after the fire.
But we're just thankful that they were here for us when we needed them.
What an amazing story, right? At this point, some services are starting to get back online, but it won't be until telecommunications companies are fully able to restore services that the Oregon Internet Response Team will start disassembling. Christine Pitawanich, KGW News.
Okay, that was a great news clip, and we're very thankful for the media coverage the project got. I've got the slide deck up, and this is not a slide deck that I've prepared exclusively for Comm Academy. This is a slide deck that we used in communicating with our partners in this project, the Lane County Information Technology Department and Emergency Management Group, as well as the State of Oregon Office of Emergency Management, specifically the ESF2 Task Force. One of the key things that we learned in Oregon Internet Response was it's not just about doing the work, but it's communicating it. We used a lot of communication help, such as this slide deck, to communicate what we could do and what we could help with. And I'll use some of this material today to show you some pictures of the work we did. So obviously there was a large fire in McKenzie River area, and quite a few houses were destroyed. 20 miles of fiber optics were destroyed. And we wanted to build a backbone to connect the upper McKenzie portion that was still very habitable, still a school and a community that was there, but its lifeline to Eugene had been severed because of the missing 20 miles of fiber. Commercial providers were struggling to restore in a quick time frame, forecasting months to provide service. And our initial response didn't really start here. Maybe I'm jumping a little bit farther ahead. The initial goal was to go out and help businesses in the community. We noted that there were things like point of sale terminals that wouldn't work because they didn't have internet or telephony, gas stations that couldn't pump gas because the gas controllers need to talk to the cloud in order to approve the purchases of gas, and without that, they couldn't pump gas. And ultimately, from that initial engagement, we learned that this connectivity problem was much bigger and going to take a long time. Now, it's true that organizations like FEMA were right there at the time. We arrived perhaps a week after the fire. The firefighting activities were really ramping down. We were in no way a first response. We were, well after the first response as the fire issue was taken care of. And at the beginning of kind of the recovery stage, FEMA came in with a MERS unit, satellite connectivity. That was all wonderful. They initially provided some Wi-Fi to the community. We tried connecting point of sale back to that, but quickly got told that was not the thing to do, that they were there just for a short time and they can't support commercial stuff. So it was very much left up to the local community and the county in this case to figure out what to do. And, in the context was there were many fires going on across the state. So the state resources were really multitasking on several of these fires. It was an unusual year. OIR identified that we could build a microwave network on perhaps 3 different routes. Not that we wanted to build all 3, but we identified 3 potential paths that microwave networks could be built. And using Wi-Fi technology, we felt that we could deploy it quickly without long lead times for licensing and so on. We surveyed what was technically possible using online mapping tools and come up with the 3 scenarios. And then we worked closely with people working on recovery of two-way radio systems and gathered information from cell companies and others. We identified that the most likely scenario was to use a couple of towers owned by the Eugene Water and Electric Board, which has generating stations, and to connect to Hoodoo Butte, where an ISP from Bend, Oregon already had a link. So by building 3 microwave hops into the McKenzie, we were able to then haul internet into the area, restoring some connectivity, augmenting satellite and other things that had been deployed, and raising the capacity overall. Some of the work that we went to involved rigging antennas on masts. So this is at Hoodoo Butte, which is a ski area. That's a pole that's at the top of the ski area. And we had professional riggers from Northwest Towers help us to properly put these antennas on the system, get power up there and relay the signal. These boxes were provided to us as a donation from a company in Portland, Oregon, IO Box, and without those we wouldn't have had a place to house our equipment. And of course the lovely view from the top of Hoodoo Butte. Again, this was one of the EWEB towers at the Carmen Smith Generating Station. EWEB is the Eugene Water and Electric Board. They have a generating station on the McKenzie River that generates water power for the city of Eugene. And the McKenzie River is also very critical in that 200,000 people get their drinking water from the McKenzie River. So in addition to the fire disrupting the electrical transmission system, there was, of course, a great concern about water quality from this. You see some of the microwave antennas, ubiquity Wi-Fi antennas that were installed on the tower. Again, professional riggers doing the work for us. In fact, the installation was provided as a donated service, which without their expertise in climbing this 200-foot tower, those antennas wouldn't have got put up there. Again, the tower sites owned by EWEB were very professional sites, and another tower was at BELKNAP BLUFF at the end of the McKenzie Valley. You can see the equipment room is very professional with very clean racking and power systems. And in fact, the public safety radio systems were on this as well. And one of the additional factors in this outage was not only the lack of this 23 miles of burned fiber for both the telco, which is CenturyLink, and the cable company, which was Charter, but in fact a critical radio site between this site, BELKNAP, and Eugene, a site known as Mount Hagen, was burned in the process. All the equipment was lost. So the microwave dishes you see, the existing dishes on this tower, were in fact not connecting back to Eugene, and the radio system on this tower had lost its microwave connection as well. Cell companies were on that tower that was destroyed. So it was a very critical tower site in addition to the 20 miles of fiber that were lost. It was a very unusual situation. Of course, there's some benefits to working in this area. It's the Willamette National Forest, and there's just some fantastic views at sunset. I talked a little about Mount Hagen. So when we decided to select a route that we could build for the microwave network, obviously Mount Hagen would have been a great choice. It had been damaged by fire. There was a lot of activity with both state and local government organizations rebuilding their networks through that site. There was activity with Verizon and AT&T. So we elected not to add to that congestion. It's a long mountain road to get to the top of the hill. There's limited space. We felt that as a volunteer org trying to bring connectivity back to the community, we would probably slow down other people and just get in the way. So we specifically chose not to go that route and considered other routes, such as the one across the National Forest to Oak Ridge or over to Bend, ultimately choosing the Bend one as the most likely and feasible that we could implement without slowing down or impacting anyone else. This is, kind of ground zero for where we got going. Castle Rock is the 3,900-foot peak in the background of this picture. It was a former fire lookout location and provides a very good high-level distribution point to the valley below, which is approximately 1,400 feet. So a little bit, more than 1,000 feet elevation change between valley floor and up above on the higher levels. This pole looks like a very, normal utility pole, but a utility pole with an outlet on it is actually a very happy thing to see when you're putting up temporary networks, because power for anything that you install is critical. Otherwise, you're going to be running generators. And as it turned out, we had to run this network for 6 months. We never planned that. We thought it might be 6 weeks or maybe 2 months before the telcos and the cable companies could restore service. It was only just decommissioned at the end of March. So it was pretty much a full 6 months that we ran this ad hoc wireless network providing service to the upper McKenzie area. This was the distribution network that we built, the key sites that we wanted to initially serve from the Castle Rock point of high land, were the McKenzie School on the left, and there was a relief activity going on at the so-called basketball training camp, the Blue Sky Market that was in the previous picture, and ultimately the upper McKenzie, the McKenzie Bridge area itself, where there was a church being used as a relief center, and the business district, the store, and so on. There was also a fire station. One of the challenges we had in this area were higher microwave frequencies, such as 2.4 gigs or 5 gigs, would not penetrate the trees. There were very dense stands of trees, Doug fir and other trees native to the area. And these, of course, blocked microwave signals. So our initial testing was using 900 meg Wi-Fi spectrum. It was reasonably effective at penetrating the trees because of the lower frequency. And normally 900 meg is not particularly good Wi-Fi spectrum in the city because of all the noise. However, in this very rural area, the noise levels were very low. So we did a proof of concept and tested from the mountaintop, Castle Rock, that you can see up above. We used a vehicle with a trailer and portable antennas to go survey, and we were able to get connectivity. It was very good as initial connectivity, but ultimately the pandemic was driving people towards video and classroom education over video. And the 900 meg system, while it provided initial connectivity, it just didn't have the capacity. So ultimately, most of this was changed out to higher frequencies where we had microwave paths that were clear in line of sight. And as the project developed, we actually got access eventually after some negotiation and discussion with CenturyLink. They allowed us to use a piece of their fiber optic cable, about 3 miles of it that had been taken out of service by the fire. And we used it to extend from a place in Rainbow, where we did have good line of sight, back to McKenzie Bridge, where the trees were quite severely impacting. So ultimately, this ended up being a microwave backbone network with some microwave distribution. We used passive optical technology over some fiber that we were loaned. We had an incredible support from Comcast, which is not their area at all. They support Eugene, but they don't have cable in this area. When OAR needed a hand to help splice some fiber, Comcast came and gave us a hand. And it was just an incredible show of, if you will, sort of mutual aid in restoring telecom. Our first connectivity in getting the network working was with some 5 gig connectivity back to BELKNAP BLUFF. And we tried it with this vehicle with a mast system on it to do a survey around town and figure out where would we get line of sight. Ultimately, this is the McKenzie State Airport, and we had good line of sight there. We couldn't get it to work directly at the Blue Sky Market in Rainbow, and ultimately used the Castle Rock site to relay. A unique installation was the McKenzie Ranger Station. This was actually the first permanent installation in the sense of something that wasn't just put up temporarily for an hour or two. And there was a lovely Douglas fir that was approximately 125 feet next to the Ranger Station. And forest engineer Sarah and forest engineer Shane from the U.S. Forest Service climbed the tree, Sarah specifically, and mounted the OAR wireless antenna on the side of the tree approximately 100 feet up to clear the other trees and get clear line of sight to the BELKNAP tower. So an exceptional situation when the trees block your path, use the tree as a tower, and just hope that you've got forest engineers who know how to spur climb a tree safely. And the interesting thing was that when we completed this installation, we had a 50 megabit up and down connection through the wireless network to the Ranger Station. And the nice thing was its normal connectivity when it had its copper CenturyLink connection was 3 megabits. So for the first time, the forest station, which is a building that could house 100 people, it had a 50 meg internet connection for its first time, and they just loved it. It was great to have the cooperation. There's another picture of Sarah up in the tree. A few small limbs were sacrificed to make a hole for the microwave antenna, and that tree performed adequately for over 6 months as a ad hoc microwave tower. Another unique thing about the project was Castle Rock, of course, was a forest lookout. It had no electricity up there, and it did have a road, but it was hike-in for the last half or 1 mile from the top of the roadway. So getting some gear to the top of this was not particularly easy. We had to get a box up there, batteries, solar panels to make a solar paneled site. And the Forest Service loaned us this powered wheelbarrow. To be honest, I'd never heard of a powered wheelbarrow before, but gosh, it sure looked a lot better than packing this stuff up. Up the path it goes. But unfortunately, the hiking trail to the top was just a little bit too much, and over the wheelbarrow went. So it ended up being Plan B, which was packing the gear to the top. The first day that some of the equipment got put up to the top and the box and the mast got mounted, there was more work after this, getting batteries and solar panels taken up, and ultimately a solar paneled microwave repeater network was installed on this Castle Rock location, 3,900 feet, and it operated for 6 months, autonomous of any generator or external power source. We were extremely happy that even the middays of December, when we don't get much sun, this ad hoc system we put together with some very quick engineering survived 6 months operation without a power outage. Some of the access points, we wanted to make them visible in the community where people could drive up and use Wi-Fi. And we had the great fortune of having IO Box give us these boxes. Now, normally they're an ivory or white color box. We took them to a vehicle wrap place that does vehicle wraps, and they put this orange wrap and the labeling around to make them very visible. And these became the, quote, orange boxes that the community used to drive up and access the Wi-Fi network. And cell coverage in the area was kind of sketchy. There were cell trucks provided, light trucks with satellites that the cell companies provided, cows. They provided a great service, but had high latency, often 600-700 milliseconds. and had a limited amount of bandwidth. You could get about 50 megs through most of the cells on light trucks. Worked great for voice calls. They really weren't designed to do the modern era of, a parking lot full of kids in the backseat of cars doing Zooms to students. Our wireless network could deliver up to about 200 megs. We would have loved to have something a lot faster, but it was an augment to what was available. By no means were we competing with the cell companies here. I think we were all bringing connectivity to the community to help augment, and I think we had probably an aggregate about 300 to 350, 400 megs of capacity between the cows of the various cell companies and the microwave backbone to bend, and it all came together in an ad hoc sort of a way, but delivered connectivity for a community that was otherwise isolated. We installed one of these boxes at the church and at the Blue Sky Market, ultimately at the school to connect the school, which was being used as a relief center. And of course, also some of the teachers would go to the school and conduct their Zoom classes because they needed a site that they could get onto Zoom. Some of their students were back in Eugene in temporary housing. Some of their students were still living at home in the Upper McKenzie, where their classes, were being literally held in the back of a car in a parking lot due to COVID. Skipping by some of these slides because they're not directly relevant to the thing today, but ultimately we added more sites and the network developed over the course of about 2 months to include more things. As connectivity became available, new requirements emerged, people were trying to help. The key thing was to try and help the businesses get back to business, opening up the gas station and the stores. One of the emerging requirements was a little bit later in the process. The Oregon state governor asked for restaurants to close and only do takeout orders. So we went through a period of trying to get IP phones working over the network so that restaurants could take takeout orders. Cell coverage was a bit sketchy for them, and they needed a consistent number. So they needed their regular restaurant telephone number, which was out of service, ported over to an IP phone. And we did that for a couple of them to try and help them get back up. We talked briefly about emergency call boxes. This was something that's a little bit harder to implement. There wasn't a 911 service in this community for quite some time. We analyzed various things that we might be able to do to help with call boxes and ultimately didn't find anything that was terribly compelling in the way of call boxes, but it was definitely a concern to not have 911 functioning in this area for, I think it would be fair to say, 4 months. And ultimately the Oregon PUC, the people that regulate intra-state telecommunications, took quite an exception with the telephone company and pushed with all their might to get 911 service repaired. Ultimately, the pressure from the PUC contributed to CenturyLink working with some of the people involved with the microwave backbone. And for a brief period of about a month or so, the microwave backbone was used to provide T1 circuits to CenturyLink to get basic POTS service turned back up in McKenzie Bridge. So this is an example that, we didn't have a plan ahead of this to do this. We brought some engineering talent to this project, scrummed on how to sort of solve this, got resources, pulled it together. There was 100 different ways this could have failed and never happened. But we're very happy that the engineering talent in Oregon that builds internets came together as volunteers. We had tremendous support from people in the community, businesses to help us out. The people at Ben Broadband providing us with the internet bandwidth, the EWEB providing us with tower access. All of these things came together. People wanted to help and contribute. And we worked very closely with Lane County, who sponsored us and ultimately provided us with liability and tort insurance through an Oregon statute for volunteers. I think we ultimately developed a great relationship with the state of Oregon emergency folks, and I think they've come to look at our capability as something interesting and unique. And we hope to never have to do this again, but the practicality is wildfires are likely again to occur in Oregon. There are many rural places in Oregon that don't have resilient fiber rings and could easily be severed from their lifeline of telecommunications. And certainly in a year like 2020, telecommunications was just all that more important given COVID and that things like Zoom classrooms were the normal. With that, thank you for this opportunity to talk about what we did. And please enjoy the rest of Comm Academy.
Likely be several months before stable internet and phone service returns to areas destroyed by the holiday farm fire. But residents and businesses don't have the time to wait, so the community is stepping in to close the communication gap. And KZI9 News reporter Jacob Roberts shows us how volunteers have come together to make it happen.
You can't see it from the highway, but nestled up in the hills above Blue River lies a critical new piece of the puzzle for restoring what the holiday farm fire took from residents who live here. A piece of the puzzle because there's many of these new communications towers in the area.
And it actually starts in Bend and then is repeated on a tower on Hoodoo, the ski resort, then to a place called Carmen Smith, and then to BELKNAP BLUFF, and then right up on the mountain behind us, which is called Castle Rock.
Providing critical access to the outside world, these new towers are the handiwork of Oregon Internet Response. Think of them like first responders, but for the internet. The group, with the help of many other volunteers, has restored internet for a ranger station as well as the local electric utility in the area. They've used the towers to set up Wi-Fi access for the public to connect to. To get connected, just look for one of these orange boxes. From there, you can go right onto your phone and search for the emergency Wi-Fi access, or you can scan the QR code. Lane County Commissioner Heather Buck says getting the community back online is a priority, not just to connect with loved ones or 911, but for students doing distance learning.
Very important that if we move forward with rebuilding the Blue River community, internet must be here. That is part of the solution for both short-term and long-term recovery.
Reporting in Blue River, Jacob Roberts, KEZI 9 News.
Oregon Internet Response says the network won't be there for good, but they'll keep it running until CenturyLink and Spectrum rebuild their network.